This is the third of our repotting videos, and this particular tree, which is a Hinoki Cypress, I don't know what particular variety it is because it's got a slightly golden color, but it's a very healthy tree, and I dare say it's a very old tree. This was grown by a customer for many, many years, and you can see how the roots have appeared on the surface. Not everyone likes the roots like this, but I think it gives it a lot of character. And sometimes you can tell just by looking at a tree that it will be very pot bound. This customer bought one of our pots some years ago and potted it in this pot. I think this pot is probably okay, although it could do with a slightly longer pot now that the tree is much bigger. But let's look at the state of the pot. So let's see if we can get it out. So I'll ask Steve to try and remove it from the pot. Do it there, if you can. Okay. Now, if you can just hold the tree up so you can see the roots. So you can see the roots are very, very strong. And the soil is not bad either. It's almost like garden mud. But we will just tease the roots gently. I think we can do it here, and we will proceed to repot it. So we try not to break too much root because we're going to put it in a much larger pot. So this is a situation where the soil, I wouldn't say, is brilliant. As I said earlier, it's almost like garden soil. So we can improve the way the tree grows by putting it in slightly better compost. So this lady has obviously done the repotting herself, but we can improve on it. And it's strange that the growth is mainly on one side. You see, this side has got a lot of root, and the other side hasn't got much root at all. But all the roots are healthy. You can see how healthy the roots are. You can see when the roots are healthy, they've got the white tips, and they're not rotten. So we will just loosen some more of the soil without breaking it, and putting it in a slightly longer pot. And we're putting in a longer pot just for the aesthetics more than anything else. So gently loosen it, and we're going to try to keep most of the roots. We're not going to cut the roots. It's important to let air into the root system, and if the soil is very compact, although it's not clay, it's almost like a sandy loam. Sometimes trees which are bought from garden centers or other sources are planted in very heavy soil, and heavy soil is not very good. So we're trying to keep those roots. We're not going to break those roots at all because we're just going to change the soil. So this is a situation where, because we're putting it in a bigger pot, we're not cutting the roots. So don't feel that you always have to cut the root. You don't always have to cut the root. We're just repotting the tree. Can you turn the root ball this way so I can have a look? Okay. All right, so just loosen some soil from the base. Okay, I'll show you again when the tree is done. If you hear pitter-patter on the roof, it's the rain which is falling on the greenhouse roof. But let me begin again. You may know my views about the choice of colors for pots. By tradition, evergreen trees are usually potted in unglazed pots or dull-colored pots like these brown pots here. The tree was originally planted in that pot, which is a greeny blue glazed pot. It suited the tree, but if you don't like it, you can use a brown pot. I have my own views about the choice of colors for pots. I believe that if you like a color, use it. But there is some logic as to why unglazed pots or the brown pots have been used with evergreen trees. With evergreen trees, because they look serene and calm with the green color, using unglazed pots does help to make the tree look more serene and a sort of restrained elegance, if we can use that term. So that was the original size of pot. Although the size looked a bit small, it's not bad really. It could do with a slightly longer pot. Let's see what these different options are that I have here. So let's try the drum pot first. See, that pot fits, and that doesn't look bad, although it does give a little more room because it's round for the tree to grow. That size of pot is okay. Let me try a rectangular pot next. Although that pot is the same size as the original pot, it has more volume for new soil to be put in, so I would be quite happy with that one. I will now try another brown pot which is slightly larger. So we'll go on to the next one and see what it looks like. Now that is much larger than any of the other ones. I think proportion-wise, this is quite a nice pot. So I think I will go with this pot. The tree, of course, is leaning slightly to the left. We need to put it more upright when we plant it. And in case those of you who are not familiar with the pots, I would just mention that that pot and that drum pot are what we call mica pots, which is a very dense plastic, and the one below is a ceramic pot. If you stand from a distance, would you know the difference between a mica pot and a ceramic pot? The answer is no. So for those of you who want to be more budget conscious, using a mica pot, there's nothing wrong with it. So it's just snobbishness. If you're happy with the mica pots, they look just as good as ordinary pots. So I will now ask Steve to pot it up. We'll tie the tree in and just put compost. Nothing special about it. The main purpose was to show you how we get rid of the old soil, which was more or less like garden mud. So we're going to pot it in our standard bonsai compost. And I think either side is possible as a front, and we're going to show some of those surface roots. So the next shot is of the tree being potted up. Now this particular mica pot, you see how clever the design is. They've had a series of holes at the bottom already made in the pot, so you don't have to use mesh. I think that is really innovative. So there you are. Pot designs do change. So this is a nice pot, and the drainage I think is quite adequate. Okay, so we just put ordinary soil. There's no need for a drainage layer. As I said, I'm not a great believer in a drainage layer, so you can see how granular the soil is. The drainage is going to be excellent. Just make sure that the tree stands vertical. I usually try and stand it on this mica semi-cascade pot, if Steve puts it there. This is a little trick that I love doing. You see, because that is absolutely horizontal, I can always make sure that the tree is horizontal when I pot it. So that is the level I'm going to pot it in. I'm going to show the roots. I think those tangled roots, although they are crisscrossing, they're very old roots, I don't want to cut them off. They can be made a feature. So each to their own. Different people like different things. So I'm going to show those exposed roots, because in nature you do find trees growing like that. In fact, if you walk in the woods, sometimes you trip on roots that are protruding out of the ground. So that is the correct position. Sometimes you need to put it slightly to the left or to the right. I think the branch on the right is longer than the one on the left, so I think that position is okay. We can try. There's not much to it. Okay, so that is the planting angle. So we tie the tree in. You notice we've used two wires. Sometimes you can use one, but two is safer. There you go. Put it under the root, yeah. Under the other root as well, Steve. That one. Yeah, as many as possible. Okay, just put the soil. I've always said in some of my other videos that when I repot, I never remove all the soil. I've seen in some Japanese manuals that, especially with Satsuki azaleas, by the way, Satsukis, this is a very good time to repot in early spring. We don't do it now in the middle of summer after flowering, which they do in Japan. In Japan, they have the rainy season, so they can do it. But some growers in Japan have also told me that doing it in early spring in January and February is a very good time for Satsuki. So that's just in passing. So as I was saying, I don't like to remove all the soil, because if you remove all the soil, there's a danger of breaking the roots, and I think it does stress the tree. So that is the way I prefer to do it. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I find that doing it like this, the way we do, by keeping some of the soil, is a much safer way of repotting. So you can try different methods, see what works for you, but because we've tried so many different ways, this is a way that works for us. At this stage, I don't bother to put moss dressing to make it look nice. If you want to put moss, you can put moss to make it look right. But if you just leave the soil as it is, and just by constant watering, the moss will grow. So I'm not bothered about that. And the other little thing that I have my own hang-ups about is I don't cut these wires. I don't cut it because should you want to change the angle of the tree, it comes off easily. We're not in a rush to do anything. We're not putting it in an exhibition. So let's put it back on the micropot to look at the angle again. As I said, this is not going to be put on an exhibition. We've just done the repotting, so we will just let the tree grow. What we will now do, I will get Steve to water it in, because watering is very important. After you repot, you should always water the tree in. So we will get a watering can and water it. So here we are. This is how we water our trees in. Really soak it so that the water goes in. And again, if you have a protected environment like we have here, we keep it in our unheated greenhouse, and that's the ideal environment. If not covered with a plastic bag, mind you, this is now almost the middle of February, so this is the ideal time to do it. You can wait a little longer, but we find that from mid-February to mid-March is the ideal time for potting most trees. And for pines, especially the Japanese white pines and the junipers, we can extend it into early April. So March and April you can do your conifers, but you can also do conifers now. But do protect them. You will need to give it a couple of waterings, because one watering may not be sufficient, so you may need to go do it again to let the water really penetrate into the tree. So that is the tree done.